Okay, yes. So first of all, I was just informed that I will give the talk today 4 hours ago, so bear with me if you have any questions. And secondly, I've given a similar talk at a couple of places. So most of the fundamental concepts I taught here will be same as there, but at the end I will also add something new. So let's begin. So this is one word with Richard. So a central theme of my research is trying to justify the concept of market equilibrium. So the reason for justification is necessary because for the market equilibrium, the definition is really simple. It's defined as factoring that a price vector such that the demand is equal to supply for all goods. And the celebrated result is by Errol and Brill to show that market equilibrium exists under pretty general conditions, but the proof is a long constructed proof, using some kind of topological response theorem. But when we talk about equilibrium fundamentally, equilibrium is referring to a dynamic, and we are talking about a stable stage of a dynamic. And such a definition certainly does not come close to the presumed meaning of any kind of so-called equilibrium. So our justification, so what we think is that existence of an equilibrium does not imply that equilibrium is realizable, and we don't think that a market equilibrium is justifiable only if there is a natural method to reach the equilibrium. So here is a very intuitive example. So if I tell you that there is a treasure somewhere, you know that it exists, but I don't tell you any hint, any method to find it, so it's meaningless. So the justification, so in this talk we will talk about the justification, and it comes in 2 hierarchies. So the first hierarchy is synchronous dynamic, and the second part is asynchronous dynamic. So first of all, let me talk a little bit about the synchronous dynamic. And what we think that in the setting of market equilibrium, we will study a natural dynamic called tatonnement and see whether tatonnement converges to the equilibrium. And as I show on the slide, tatonnement is a natural. Is a dynamic such that if the demand is greater than the supply, then increase the price, and if vice versa, decrease price. And there are although this is a pretty natural dynamic, well motivated, but we know that tatonnement is in general does not converge to market equilibrium. And so one of our works is to find the classes of markets in which tatonnement converge. So this will not be the entire focus of this talk. I just want to mention it here to motivate the whole talk. And as I said before, there are 2 hierarchies, and the main focus of this talk is about the second hierarchy, which is the asynchronous dynamic, asynchronous tatonnement. So here is the motivation. What we observe from real markets is that they will use, because the price updates are mostly distributed by different sellers. So unavoidably, the price updates are asynchronous, and sometimes they will use outdated information. So this is an observation that motivates us to analyze asynchronous tatonnement. And before we have a work with Cole and Devanur to show that tatonnement is equivalent to gradient descent for some class of markets. So these 2 points end up to motivate us to analyze the so-called asynchronous coordinate descent. So which will find applications in large-scale optimization and machine learning problems. So this is the whole skeleton of this talk, and in the rest of the talk, I will just give a little bit more details on each part. So here are 5 parts of that, so each part will be really short, so it won't be over time. Okay. So here, I will focus on a special class of the more general exchange market called Fisher markets. So this is easier for us to have an analyzed asynchronous model. So because the price update will be done by the sellers only. So here there are two groups of agents, and the buyers will have money only, but it doesn't have any value on money. So what he will use is that he will use the money to buy the goods in the market to maximize the utility. And the seller will sell, here in the model, we will assume that each seller sells one good, and also he's the person who is responsible to change the prices so that to converge to the equilibrium. And we assume that the sellers do not want to keep any of the goods, so he just wants to get the money from the buyers. So here is a really quick example. So suppose the utility function is that one, and suppose the budget is 100. Then at some given prices, so the buyer just wants to spend all the money, and then just get the bundle that maximizes the utility function. So this is just a very intuitive example to show how the market is working in this model. And then we can talk about demand. At any given price vector, you can talk about the demand for any buyers, and then just add them up to and that's the demand for a good. And then for the supply, it's well defined. So, and then we talk about the equilibrium such that is the set of price vectors such that the demand could supply for all the goods. So the problem of computing market or Nash equilibrium is an active research area in theoretical computer science after the year of 2000. And one very famous quote that motivates this study is this the following. So if your computer cannot compute an equilibrium efficiently, then neither can the market or the game. So after that, there are different streams of research. One is to devise efficient algorithms, and the other one is to solve hardness results. And then, so for the efficient algorithms, what we observe for the literature is mostly they use some kind of, I would say, sophisticated method that use either simplex method, primordial method, convex programming. And all these actually need assuming the market to know all the information of the buyers and sellers. So, and then to carry out some kind of centralized computation with what is just the global information. But when we look at the real markets is really distributed. It's unlikely that there is a single party that possesses all the information. So we would like to change the quote in the previous slide a little bit. So what we think is that a market equilibrium is realizable only if it can be computed within the market. And here actually I mean the market is not a fully powered computer, but only a power that has restricted power. So here are some features that we observed from real markets. So first of all, local information. So we assume that, so in our model, we assume that the seller only knows very limited information. For example, our seller of a good will know the price of the good, and also he will know the demand of the good, but he will not know anything about the other goods. And third, second, the prices will be updated with out-of-date information. And third, the price updates are probably asynchronous. And actually, this will correspond to some typical assumptions in the so-called distributed computing, that is communication delay and asynchrony. And also, we want to note that although this talk is about market equilibrium, there are also research work that about Nash equilibrium, where the local information is the payoff. Okay, so this is about the market and market equilibrium. And now I will talk about tatonnement. So tatonnement, as I said before, so if the demand is greater than the supply, then the price increase and so on. And here is a mathematical formulation that the price will be updated by this formula. When the excess demand is positive, then the change will be positive. And then what we saw is in 2 years ago, we saw that for some classes of market, efficient markets requires having the so-called CES utility function, where the definition is given here. We saw that for this class of markets and some more markets, tatonnement is equivalent on gradient descent on a convex function. And a little bit more details that for some of these markets, the market equilibrium can be represented by the so-called Heisenberg-Gale convex program. And what we find is that the field of the convex program actually is the desired convex function with the gradient equal to the negative of the excess demand, such that, and that's why tatonnement is equivalent to gradient descent.
So this is the theorem of the previous study. Saying for complementarities, you're actually getting the equilibrium on the previous slide.
So you would do it for all Cs.
All CS functions you're getting, even their complements, you're finding efficiently the equilibrium.
Yes, you mean complementary units that the opposite of something.
Well, less than 0.
Yeah, but this one is for efficient markets.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's why. And actually, so why I mentioned this one is that because recently we also see some other results about the Russian equilibrium for combinatorial options. They also they take the standard contract IP and LP and then to take the dual and do some modifications to show that the subgradient of a convex function is equal to the excess demand. So there may be something more from here. And then with the gradient descent toolbox, we show that the tatonnement rules with this one, which is multiplicative, that it will converge pretty quickly to a market equilibrium. So this part, okay, so I'm finishing here with the synchronous one. So with 5 minutes left, I will talk about asynchronous one, asynchronous tatonnement.
So what do you mean by critical path? Like epsilon approximate within polynomial?
Yes, so it's some kind of a constant, where the constant is actually critical plus times log 1 over epsilon time to get an epsilon equilibrium. So here we want to talk about our asynchronous tatonnement model. So the top part is about synchronous tatonnement. So we assume that all prices updated step by step. So in this case, there is no communication delay, no information misrepresentation. And in the second part, so here is our simplified model. So suppose we focus on 2 consecutive of price updates to the same good. And then in between, then we assume that so there will be, because due to assembly, there will be some prices updates to the other goods. And then because of these updates in the middle, the excess demand to good J will change in between. And then the asynchronous tatonnement rule here is pretty flexible, that we can use this rule, which is similar to the synchronous part, but the CJ tutor can take any value between the minimum and the maximum value in between. So by this method, we allow some sort of error called the bounded asymmetry. And also we can also generalize to take CJ tutor to also to take some value that is beyond the last update. So say if a price update must be taken at this place, but the information you possess is like three time units ago, you can still take that piece of information to carry on the update. and at the end it will still converge. And this is the informal statement of the theorem, is that so tatonnement is robust against asynchrony and outdated information by using a step size which is slightly less than the one used in the synchronous tatonnement. Okay, so now we talk about asynchronous coordinate descent. So at first we are only doing an analysis and on asynchronous tatonnement, but then when I talked to our friend about in machine learning, we found that actually they are doing something pretty similar that is asynchronous because they will always use the GPU with more than 1,000 cores to perform optimization problems for some machine learning problems. And it's very hard to keep the information consistent. So what they did is just to let each core to do independently to work independently on different coordinates and try to get an optimal solution. But they don't really analyze that. They just think that, okay, it works. But we think that as a theoretical person, it's important for us to show that, to have a theoretical analysis. And actually, after we've done the analysis on the asynchronous tatonnement, we found that, it's pretty easy to generalize to this setting. So here, it's pretty much solving all the things. So now we have the parallel technology on with 1,000 cores, and it's good to take full advantage of them to do parallel gradient descent. And as before, the major issues is communication delay and erratic information. So here I just introduced the problem very quickly. So the problem is given a complex function which is smooth, and we want to find the minimum as find an approximation of the minimum. And here the assumption is that the F is smooth and the Lipschitz gradient parameters is bounded. And also we have a further assumption that what we call the frame of communication delay, which means that if there is an update to coordinate state before, and it will only affect, because asynchronous is somehow about okay, so the time is almost up. Okay, so anyway, so if there is an update, so what we say is that it will only affect at most delta updates to other coordinates. And this is the assumption. So here, so again, we allow the erratic inaccurate gradients, and the update rule is the standard gradient coordinates descent rule. And what we show is that if the step size lambda is proportional to 1/delta, then we can show that the convergence is still guaranteed in the asynchronous model. And here is just a very quick overview. So here we focus on two special cases, asynchronous tatonnement and also asynchronous coordinate descent. But what we think is that perhaps we can generalize to study more dynamics, right? So for this talk, we may, for more interest, maybe we can analyze asynchronous learning dynamics in games. But more generally, we are interested in trying to perform asynchronous analysis on any kind of dynamic. And the last point is that for the machine learning problems I just talked about, actually this function is more interesting to the machine learning society. That's what they call the recognition problem. So they want to, and here the difficulty is that the PI here may not be complex. So it can be any kind of non-smooth complex function. But and we are working on that, and we are trying to. We are already getting some progress. So that's the end of it.
We're going to take all questions asynchronously.
So here, like why additive? It could be multiplicative also.
This one?
Yeah. So,
That's not quite the same. You mean this? No. Well, this problem is really